the show, makes it available to more people so that the great story can be told. And it's like relatable because humans, the path to hell is paved in good intentions. Like you will do whatever you will do for your people you love and the people you care about. And sometimes that's hurting people in this specific scenario. And like whether that's overt violence or passive violence of like just being like, oh, I don't care if we're cool, you know, go get them. Because then like I'm safe for a little bit longer, you know.
Yeah.
Humans do that very often. It's probably like one of our biggest flaws as humans. Not the love, but like the way we
the
weaponize
us versus
it.
Them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
hierarchical.
Yeah. And I'll talk about it a little bit. So essentially the title of the first part of my section is, do we need a viral apocalypse to change society, or can we do that before it's too late? So one piece of The Last of Us that is really fascinating is the climate disasters that facilitate the rise of the cordyceps fungus. As I said, I drink cordyceps in my matcha because it's in there. And then I was like, I guess that experts are telling me it's cool, so
I guess.
I haven't turned into a monster yet. But as game unpacked the unlikeliness of a cordyceps-based apocalypse, there is something to nature reclaiming the societies that we have built and shoving us into a more isolated and primitive shell of what we once were. In its purest form, the show and game act as a warning, both to what humans are capable under all encompassing threats of death, as well as what nature is capable of to protect itself from our impacts. We know that nature and other living things are just that, alive. But humans, especially those drenched in Western culture, detach themselves from the significance of that reality. We don't take care of the planet. So that nature is alive just as we are, and it just uses other means to protect itself. So the cordyceps virus, fungus, whatever, is an act of nature, just like the happening. They're like, people, you're doing it. Wow, maybe don't. And they took us out because another thing was like, I really want to keep living, and you facilitated my turn, you know?
Yeah.
And we're like, dang. And then the world becomes green again, and all of our destructive planet-killing things collapse. And we have this really beautiful landscape of like greenery taking over urban landscapes and stuff like that. As horrifying as it is.
The whole pandemic of like people being like, nature is healing. And then it was like, there are flowers blooming in Antarctica. And it was like, there are flowers blooming in Antarctica.
Yeah.
Nightmare.
It's a whole thing. So in an article titled, The Last of Us is an almost perfect metaphor for climate change, but it gets one thing wrong from the Salon. They say, the show trades immersive action for evocative drama and somehow doesn't stumble over itself. A testament to the show's creator, Craig Mazin, and Neil Druckmann, the mind behind the video game, the duo are clearly aware of the game's broader implications. And Mazin recently told Wired, I think the thread underneath The Last of Us is you don't want to be too successful on planet Earth. And he continues that I'm not an anti-progress, back to the Stone Age guy, but we must regulate ourselves or something will come and regulate us against our will. And the cordyceps fungus is not necessarily the Earth rising to defeat humanity, but it is an unseen consequence of human impacts on our climate, because the only way the cordyceps fungus will be able to transfer into mammals is if the planet keeps rising in temperature, allowing them to adapt and evolve to accommodate and survive in warmer climates. So that in raising the temperature of our planet, we are facilitating this evolution so they can go into mammals. And unlike the show, however, we are likely to see a much slower impact of climate change damage. It's something that like has ripple effects. It's not something that's going to make headlines until honestly it's largely too late.
Yeah, it's already too late.
Until it's impossible to ignore. So the biggest danger of the climate crisis is because we're facing ripple effects right now, but the real damage won't be seen until future generations as the planet continues to seek ways to cleanse itself of its human parasite. Because aren't we just cordyceps ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
Doing what we need to do to survive.
Yeah, eating the organs of the earth.
Yep. And it's like, who's rooting for the stuff? It's whatever. The institutions that hold the power in our... Yeah, I mean, honestly. And the institutions that hold the power in our societies are not accounting for what the future of society will become. They are largely detached from the true impacts of climate change, or simply just don't care about what will happen to the younger generations and humanity as a whole when they leave this earth, because they're all dinosaurs. Fossil fuels, unrenewable resources, and overconsumption are literally killing our planet, heating it, and transforming what life will be like in the future, literally making the planet hospitable for this unlikely possibility of a future, but it's facilitating that being a possibility. It can be really overwhelming when looking at the climate crisis, not because, like, as an individual, there's no one thing that anyone can do and be like, I did it, I solved climate change. And it's not so much like an individual person issue. Like, people can make you feel guilty about not recycling all they want, but like, if the companies aren't going to actually recycle the stuff because it's not profitable, the issue is not the individual person, it is the corporations and companies that are like doing harm at mass scale.
Yeah, and Taylor Swift.
Yes, with her like jets.
Trips. Yep.
Yeah. So how we as individual people, motivated by those around us and our connections, basically have so much less power to change the systems than the government structures themselves. But if we work together, it's a little different. If we're working as individuals, it doesn't really do anything. But if we work as a collective and we build community, it works a little better. So in looking at it this way, the fireflies and uprisings seem to be something we may need as a pre-apocalypse response rather than a post. So climate change and the increase of pandemics is something that will happen also. So as I said, not the cordyceps pandemic, but as we literally just dealt with a really big one and still are. Unfortunately, with climate change, the increase of infectious diseases spreading globally will continue. Again, not resulting in a total apocalypse, but definitely resulting in mass losses of life for many of our most vulnerable. And the gradual shifts in weather patterns, melting glaciers, and habitual destruction or habitat destruction are not only altering ecosystems, but also promoting and the transmission of pathogens into new regions and hosts. As extreme weather and altered seasons become the norm, the interconnectedness between climate change and public health becomes more evident, demanding urgent systemic changes to prevent further crisis. Systemic change that under capitalism likely will struggle to take off without swift and determined action. And I say that specifically because the lack of profitability in like actually doing it. Under capitalism, you're not going to fix the problem because it has to be profitable to do so.
Yeah, and it's not going to be. And like, because we've already given power to the companies and people who are responsible for that. Like, you know, they have entire smear campaigns against green energy. Like, it's...
Yeah, or they ban the only cars that are actually doing it so that Tesla can have a good time, you know? Yeah. It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. The changing climate conditions expand the range and activity periods of disease vectors such as mosquitoes and ticks. Warmer, shorter winters and longer summers create favorable environments for these vectors to thrive and spread diseases like malaria, Lyme disease, and babesiosis, which is a disease of cattle and other livestock transmitted by the bite of ticks. And it affects
babesiosis.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying
it. Pig.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but it is babesiosis. But it affects red blood cells essentially and causes the passing of red or brackish urine. So not fun. For instance, malaria transmitting mosquitoes are moving northward due to increased temperatures and altered rainfall patterns, leading to higher transmission rates in previously unaffected areas like Florida and Texas. Specifically within people who had not left the United States, which is like a big deal because it used to be like, you travel, you get it, you bring it back. Similarly, tick-borne diseases are now occurring in winter and in regions farther north and west than in the past. This expansion not only increases the incidence of these diseases, but also introduces them to populations with little to no immunity or preparedness basically exacerbating public health challenges. You saw how great we handled the pandemic.
Yeah, and now look at us, because now we don't even have whatever defenses we used to have because we've been inside.
They're gone. Yeah.
Oh, no.
And moreover, the phenomenon of zoonotic transfer, where our diseases jump from animals to humans, is intensifying due to habitat destruction and climate change. Deforestation, specifically, and the loss of natural habitats, forces wildlife to move closer to human settlements, increasing the likelihood of a zoonotic disease such as the Nipah virus, which is from the World Health Organization, says it's transmitted through contaminated food or directly between people. And in infected people, it causes a range of illnesses, such as the asymptomatic version, that's an infection, to acute respiratory illness and fatal encephalitis. The virus could also cause severe disease in animals, such as pigs, resulting in significant economic losses for farmers. And as well as plague and hantavirus. You know what the plague is because of books, but hantavirus is a disease that can infect people worldwide. People who get hantavirus from contact with like rodents, mice, especially when exposed to their urine, droppings, or saliva. It can also spread through the bite or a scratch of a rodent, but it is rare, and it essentially can cause two syndromes. Hantavirus, found in Western Hemisphere of the U.S., can cause hantavirus pulmonary syndrome, as well as the hemorrhagic fever with renal syndrome. Basically, one is worse than the other, but is a group of clinically similar illnesses caused by hantavirus found mostly in Europe and Asia. It is adapted to where it is located. So essentially, the spread of these illnesses become too great for public officials to manage. Specifically, the Nipah virus outbreak for example, was linked to the deforestation in Indonesia that displaced fruit bats, which then transmitted the viruses to pigs and subsequently to humans. So the Nipah virus has a fatality rate of 40 to 75%, which is really high, and serves as a stark example about how dangerous and how quickly these kind of viruses can take people out. As climate change accelerates, these zoonotic transfers are becoming more frequent, highlighting the need for integrated approaches to wildlife conservation and public health. In addition to the vector-borne and zoonotic diseases, climate change also influences the spread of fungal and waterborne infections. Fungal infections like valley fever, which causes a lung infection, is caused by the really hard to say fungi, Coccidioides fungi, which are appearing in new areas due to changing environmental conditions. Previously confined to hot, dry regions, valley fever has recently been diagnosed as far as Washington state. Waterborne diseases such as E. coli and Vibrio, as well as like when we did the Bay episode, like flesh-eating bacteria from the destruction of the ecosystems. They're becoming more common and as rising sea levels and increased coastal flooding create conducive environments for these pathogens. So these shifts underline the importance of robust disease surveillance systems and the need for healthcare professionals to adapt to emerging healthcare threats driven by climate change, and as well as like our changing immune systems. As Gabe said, like what COVID has done to our immune systems, as well as what isolating has done to our immune systems, will have long-lasting implications. And the economic and social impacts of climate-induced disease spread are profound, further complicating global health instability. Essentially, it does a bunch of different things, including declining agriculture due to changing weather patterns, threatens food security, leading to starvation and economic instability. This, in turn, weakens our immune system, increases susceptibility to infectious diseases, creating a vicious cycle of health deterioration and economic hardship. If you're also thinking of like our insurance system and the way that we like as a country don't feed our population properly, we're already setting up these illnesses to spread and do well. The COVID-19 pandemic has demonstrated how interconnected these issues are, with climate change likely playing a role in the virus's spread and impact too. The financial motivations under capitalism often deprioritize public health measures and climate action, exacerbating these crises. So essentially, like, Biden's, let's go back to work. thing.
Yeah, 5 days. Go back to work.
I think it's like
Says the
even less now.
mayor. What?
I think it's like you can have COVID and you still have to go to work in certain places.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's but now I'm saying people have to go into work in the office 5 days a week.
Oh yes, sorry.
Says
yes.
our mayor. Yeah. But also thinking like of like food deserts and like food inequality, like if like in the instance of The Last of Us, with the fact that it was grain, it was rice that spread so quickly. It's like, what other options do people have? Like, often is like, you're going to get these, like, we're sharing the same food because it's quick and easy kind of thing. And we're not as equipped to provide for ourselves.
Yeah. No, it's a whole thing. Like, it's, as I said, like, it's not just one thing. It's not just one person. There's so many factors that all stack. And that's why it's, I guess, so hard for people to like understand and like recognize the level of threat taking place. Is because it's not just like, oh yeah, we do this one thing and it's fixed, or it's not just this one thing that's wrong. It's like there's so many interconnected things that are wrong. It's a like poisonous mycelium network instead of like a good one that we're trying to create. That's like doing all this shady behind the scenes stuff that's going to like destroy us long term if we don't address it. So in conclusion, for that part of this section, the connection between climate change and the spread of infectious diseases is clear and alarming. The expansion of disease vectors, increased zoonotic transfers, and the spread of fungal and waterborne pathogens are all exacerbated by the changing environmental conditions. And addressing this issue requires comprehensive strategies, it can't just be one thing, that include stronger disease surveillance, better training for healthcare professionals, and robust public policies aimed at mitigating climate change and protecting public health. And also just like taking care of each other. And as we navigate these challenges, caring about life in general, not just human life, just life, like life and descent, as you said.
Yeah. like caring about the future.
Just care. Not about the next year, but about like 50 years from now when you might not even be here anymore.
Planting trees that we're going to be under.
Yeah. Earthseed. It's coming through. It is crucial to recognize the urgent need of the systemic change to safeguard our future against the escalating threat of climate-induced diseases. And if this show didn't make you feel that, maybe I just did. I don't know.
Yeah.
So how does one help prevent this kind of future? Because like, I just throw a lot of depressing stuff at you. So like anything else, it is no good to get people all depressed and overwhelmed by the climate crisis. Don't look up it. We can't fix anything that we think is unfixable. It starts with deconstructing a lot of systems, specifically colonization, capitalism, and our hierarchical social structures. And that sounds really like nebulous. What does that even mean? But this is why the issues taking place currently matter so much. Like saving our planet and each other is so much more complicated than any one individual action. As a collective of actions, a collective of people working together and building community that need to heal this wound by educating ourselves and doing whatever we can to educate each other and creating the structures for a disaster utopia before the disaster. And all of the horrifying things in the world right now all connect back to climate protection, acting as a mycelium network, but like a good one. Standing up for people in places like Palestine, the Congo, Sudan, and what's happening in New Caledonia are essential pieces of solving the larger problem at play, because largely what's taking place in all those places are things that hurt the climate. They're literally dumping toxic stuff into the air all the time to murder people. So, or they're forcing children to mine stuff that they should not be touching at all. And like taking from the earth. It's a whole thing. So you have to care about those things, even though they seem all like individual events taking place right now. They're all connected and they all will help heal the planet by deconstructing the colonial powers that be and the capitalist motivations for what they're doing. So also an additional thing you can do is supporting and listening to Indigenous populations. And the Climate Clock app, like it's all about returning land, so because they know what to do to heal it. So essentially, why are we doing this? Because structures and systems that perpetuate colonial control over these areas destroy land and humans for profit, which facilitates climate harm and human harm, like just like harm. You shouldn't be pro harm, you know?
Yeah.
When the system prioritizes profit over life, life is the cost of these systems existing. And the only way we can stop these big bads, the people making the most harm happen actively, is by dismantling these systems from being able to system, boycotting the companies that are causing the harm and taking the power back from them. For example, just a list of few people that you consider never buying things from again if you can help it. Kellogg's, Apple, HP, ExxonMobil, Shell, BP, Nestle, Coca-Cola, Starbucks, any fast fashion brand, Google, Dell, Microsoft, Samsung, and especially Tesla.
Yes.
All of them are important. And among others. So like if you want to fill our comment section with other people that we should maybe not be spending our business or money towards, I would love to hear it. Additionally, this is the way that we tell them that it's not profitable to damage the world. Because they can only keep doing it if we give them their money. If that's the language that they speak, if they only speak the language of money, you have to tell them, then dang, it's not profitable to hurt people anymore. That's crazy.
Dang.
Maybe you only get people's money if you aren't a supervillain or a dragon, you know? And what's a big important part of that is that the boycotts are working. Like Starbucks is flipping out,
floundering,
panicking. Like literally, like they had like their investor like cuss them out on live TV. Because like, why didn't you tell us? It's like, maybe if you were like paying attention to like what's happening on TikTok instead of banning it, then you would know. So essentially, by continuing to divest from them, we are forcing their hand. We're making the harm not profitable anymore. And that might be what we have to do before we dismantle these systems. So they're scrambling. Showing companies that we will not stand for them perpetuating harm is a big piece of destroying their power. And us prioritizing each other over convenience can make us as deadly as these companies, as the cordyceps fungus was in the show. We can do that because we can do that before the climate crisis gets worse, and we can do that before the apocalypse. Instead of just like waiting for the apocalypse to care about each other. Let's care about each other now. And I mean, there's also lots of people already doing that. There's lots of people who are fighting and standing up for things right now, both actively and passively. But the moral of the story is we don't need an apocalypse, or rather we shouldn't, in order to care for each other. And last thing I'll say is, so when looking at media like this, when seeing how people respond to it, oftentimes people side, like very obviously, like you watch The Last of Us and you're like, Fedra's cool. I want to be in Fedra, you know, or like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so easy to side with the underdog when watching media that is like these dystopian futures. Like no one's like, oh, maybe I would want to be a part of the Capitol in the Hunger Games because I would love to be the one doing that. Like, I'm sure there's somebody, but like the most of the population isn't going to be the one being like, oh, they're great. Like, I think what they're doing, just top tier. Love that for everyone. Sure. You know, like it's very easy.
Kids fight to the death.
Yeah, like who's... No, everyone is like Katniss Everdeen, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Everyone's like Joel and Ellie. Like, they're not like, heck yeah, Fedra.
Yeah.
So the revolutionary fighting against the system of oppression is the one we generally side with in media. And it's easiest for us to see how wrong these oppressive structures are in media when they feel further away from reality. They make us feel inspired to stand up for what is right. The ethical and moral dilemmas have less personal trauma attached to them. But there is an issue with presenting these stories as some fantastical dystopian future world because villains like Fedra are our system right now. Yeah. The atrocities enacted in these post-apocalyptic dystopian futures are based on the realities that have already taken place or are currently taking place. They are what is being done in places like Palestine and the Congo, among many other places across the globe. So they are our history and our present, and without recognizing that and standing up for these things in real time, like no one likes protests while they're happening, but they write about them and say, oh, great, in history. You know what I mean?
Thank goodness that happened. Yeah.
Yeah, like you need to support them in real time for things to change. And if we don't, we will repeat it until there's nothing left. We will facilitate a world where The Last of Us is all we have. So for actionable next steps, please see the following resources. If you go to our blog, you'll see a bunch of resources, specifically like step-by-step guides to taking actions, Operation Olive Branch spreadsheets for families to support in Palestine, mutual aid spreadsheets for people to support in the Congo, petitions you can sign, and various other things, as well as some brands you can support that actively support Palestine, and creators that educate, like, are the main people that, like, I follow to learn about things. For all of these topics and things you can read, I have like a long list, including like Braiding Sweet Cuirass, Indigenous Wisdom, Scientific Knowledge. Gabe was recommending a book called Emergent Strategies, Shaping Change and Changing Worlds. Justice for Some, It's Not That Radical, The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine, How to Go Mad Without Losing Your Mind, The Trinity of Fundamentals, and the list goes on. There's lots of books that you can read in the meantime while you're figuring this out, and then you're economically supporting creators and educators who are on the ground fighting. So there's lots of things you can check out on our blog, which we'll link access to. But moral of the story is there's lots of stuff you can do, both actively and passively. Revolution is accessible if you seek it out.
Yeah. And I will say, like, we don't like read each other's pieces before so that we can react genuinely. We usually just make sure we're not talking about exactly the same thing. But I do love that we both kind of came to the same conclusion of like, we could stop this now. We have to value people, that the apocalypse, like whatever form it's going to be, is going to happen. Like it is happening in a lot of places, like the apocalypse and that level of trauma and relentless pain is happening in a lot of communities and areas in the world. And so it's not alien, it's not foreign to understand that, and that we can be doing things now to do that. And the biggest way to win the apocalypse is to care about each other more than we care about winning, or more than we care about getting one up on the next one. Like, we just got to care and love and create those resilient spaces, those disaster utopias.
Because then it'll be harder to destroy, like, honestly. And it's a whole thing. Like, the dystopian thing you're reading about or learning about is someone's literal reality. So we have to care about each other more. Any
Octavia Butler you read, it's speculative fiction. It's I read some statistics and I'm just paying attention. Like, I'm literally just looking around, and I'm like, you know what? I bet our literacy levels are gonna tank, and then lo and behold, parable is over. You know, like it's not far off. Climate change. Who knew? Oh, climate is gonna affect our natural world, and we have all these fires. Parable is over. So
it's a whole thing.
And that's why I really appreciate media like this. And people are going to hate on it, and those are the people who are never going to be the ones who appreciate it. And I think those of us who do appreciate it can see for what it really is, and that it is like this ballad. It's this testimony to the humans and the very complex ways that we exist in the world and within each other. And so it's a great show. I highly recommend. It is a very emotional show, so you have to be in the right headspace. It is going to break your heart in a lot of ways because it is gritty in that way, but there is sprinkles of hope, and there's in really kind of gritty way. But that's our Video Games Became Really Good Shows series.
Only 2 episodes this one. So.
We were going to do more, but then it was like, whatever, we want to move on to something else. So we're going to do a different series in a week. In 2 weeks, you'll see us again in our new series, and we'll be doing something else. But let us know what you think about The Last of Us. Have you played the games? Are there other games that you would like to see them make really great TV shows out of? And why do you have such confidence that they could do it? I don't believe in the Bioshock game turned into a show. It's not going to be
Yeah.
good. I don't care what anyone says. And I don't believe in the Borderlands show. I don't believe in them.
Yeah.
You can't.
What if they end up being good though, Gabe?
I think that would be bonkers, and we would come back on the show and
You have to make a public statement.
I would. I would.
I was wrong about Borderlands.
I dare you, creators,
and I'm sorry,
to make it good and to hire me to be in anything. I want to be a creature. So, don't get married.
Let your kids, or your kid will be immune when they try to eat them, and then they're like, yeah, I'm gonna cure the apocalypse, maybe.
Or you lose your kid, and that becomes like that's like when they fridge your wife in comics, but it's like they killed your kid, and now you have emotional trauma.
Yeah,
that will come back later.
Yeah, that also.
Okay, like us, subscribe, leave a comment. You know what it is. All right, bye.